parece que vamos a empezar la charla. Matteo me ha pedido que le presente, pero en realidad lo conocéis todos, ¿no? Bueno, Matteo llegó al IAC en el año 2005, cuando terminó su tesis en Roma, y se incorporó a nuestro grupo de investigación durante 4 años con temas del Plan Nacional. Y después tuvo una Juan de la Cierva, y después una genérica, y después finalmente ha llegado a la plaza de astrónomo de soporte, que creo que es una plaza que, bueno, que al final donde puede desarrollar su gusto por ayudarnos a todos, ¿no? Así que, bueno, es guay. Y nada, mencionar también que a pesar de que se está dedicando a la observación desde tierra, ¿no?, a gestionar este observatorio desde tierra, en realidad también es un ávido observador con el Space Telescope, que es el instrumento, el telescopio que quizá mejor nos va para el tema de investigación al que Matteo se dedica, que serían poblaciones resueltas en el grupo local, ¿no? Y nada, pues ya.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. Thanks for coming. As you will see, the success of this project depends on the feedback that we will receive from the community, so I hope it will get better with time. So let me start saying thanks to the people that are sharing with me this task that are listed here. So Julia, Begoña, Sergio, Marian, and Jose Luis. And also let me thank Alex and Casiana for the support that they are providing to this project. The idea is pretty simple. We have created this working group to study the actual use that the ISC community is doing of both Canarian observatories. And we will see later how we will do this. The reason to take such an initiative are many. First, we are a big community. We are increasing, so there are many different needs from the observational point of view inside the ISC. At the same time, we have access more and more to a larger number of telescopes, of instruments, of facilities that are growing in number, in size, in complexity. So, on the other hand, we see that not often there is the request of telescope time that one could expect. So we have among the best facilities in the world, but the pressure sometimes is not as high as expected. Also because we are drowning in data coming from surveys, ongoing and future surveys. So the natural questions are we missing something? Or are we doing the optimal use of our resources, or can we improve? So this is the basic idea that is moving us. So let me start from the basic with a compilation of information of what we have access to. Of course, we have 2 observatories, one located here in Italia, Observatorio del Teide, one located in La Palma. And possibly the most peculiar characteristic that we have is that most of the instrumentation that is located in both observatories is not ours. We own a very limited number of instruments. So the great advantage of the Canarian observatories is that people from outside come, install their instrument, and give us access to them. So we have access to a huge number of telescopes, and we provide access to the whole Spanish community that are not ours. We don't have a direct management above them, but we have an important word. So we have both night and solar telescope that mostly work in the optical and in the infrared. We also have other instruments or experiments that work at different wavelengths, starting from Quixote, Magic, and now the large size telescope. So we basically cover the spectrum from 30 centimeter to 10 meter telescope, or 23 if you take into account the charcoal one. And these allow us to observe many different ways. Normal classical imaging, wide field imaging. We have access to fast photometry instruments like Hypercam. We have lucky imaging instrumentation like FastCam. We have many different spectrographs working in different spectral ranges with different resolution, spectropolarimetry. So we have really a lot of chances. And the way we observe has been evolving with time. Used to be classical visitor mode, then service, now we have queue mode. We have access to remote. Here I discriminate between service and queue depending on whether there is someone taking the data for you or not, or if the telescope are fully robotic. And another characteristic is that we have a quite complex way of accessing to the telescope time. Now, if you want to compare, for example, with ESO, ESO is much more monolithic, much more easy. You have one cut, 2 semesters, one proposal deadline, and that's it. We have 3 different cuts. So the more classical night cut takes proposal for the GTC, the William Herschel, Newton, Nordic Telescope, Galileo, Liverpool, Stella Mercator. You have the solar cut for the 4 solar telescopes. Now, since a couple of years, we have the ISC cut, which takes care of the small telescopes and the telescopes belonging to networks like La Scumbre, SARA. But on top of that, we have access to the international time, which takes 5% of the entire amount of telescope time. Some of the telescopes have guaranteed time only for the ISC community, for example, Las Cumbres. Since we host here in Izdania 2 40-centimeter telescope, we have access to, well, we have granted time for 300 hours to the whole network of 40 centimeters around the world. And other instrument that works only through special agreements that allow the ISC community to have access to the data. So, just a few examples of how complex the thing is. Is a list of telescopes here. Let's take, for example, the night cut. So the way to access telescope time for many telescopes through regular proposals, 2 deadlines, 1 every 6 months. But then there is access to service time, Galileo, NOT, and INT. So these are different columns because these are different rules, different forms, different regulation, but still the same people who judge the proposal. There is director discretionary time that is managed by, again, the night cut. But for example, the GTC has different rules from the other 4 telescopes. Different form, yeah. The different deadlines, different everything. But still, they are in the same box. The William Herschel, can we apply for service time to the William Herschel? Yes, we can, but then it's not managed by the night kite. It's managed through a different web page, through a different form, directly by the owner of the telescope. Liverpool as well is also, well, it's not exactly service time, it's called reactive time, but again, a different form to access telescope time that are not directly managed by us, but we have access to. Sure. Yes. No, well, no, they are done by the director, but they are, it's more software thing. It's more how to manage the proposal, and it's more a software thing. Web page and this kind of thing. I mean, you don't send an email to the director with a proposal. It goes through other channels. Then we have these other telescopes that are managed by the CCAT, so we have the Carlos Sanchez, the OGS, SAR and La Scumbre network, the 80 centimeter. And as I said before, some of them have regular proposal, visitor, but they also have, some have also guaranteed time, so you have 2 different channels to ask for time to the same telescope, plus the international time, plus Opticon, Plus, if you have collaborators in the UK or in the Netherlands, you can also access through these different channels. Another example is the different observing modes that we have. We have a number of telescopes that are fully robotic. So one prepares the observation, submit the observing block somewhere, and then at some point we receive the observations without interaction with human beings. But then it's interesting, for example, to stress the telescopes that have access via remote connection. So as I will explain later, this has been a big breakthrough for our telescope, especially the Carlos Sanchez and the IC80. Now, it's not mandatory to go on the mountain to observe, but we can observe remotely. So you can quietly connect from anywhere in the world and take most of advantage of our telescopes here. And another example is when to apply for time. Since we have different cut, we have different deadlines, but also the definition of semester changes depending on the telescope. So when if the proposal deadline is the same, when thinking to your proposal, you have to think that you will start observing at different time. So if you want to observe the same target with different telescope, maybe it will be visible in one but not in the other. So all this is to say that you have to think about a lot of things to convert a good idea into a good paper, instead of converting a good idea into a lot of data that sits somewhere in your computer and you will never touch them. For example, things to think about before the observation. So, will I prepare observing blocks? Maybe, because GranTeCan has its software for the observing blocks, not as a different one. The Newton doesn't have software for observing block, but rather it's possible to observe through simple script shells. What about the calibration plan? Do I have to worry about bias, flat, arcs, lamps? Is there a daily calibration? Is that enough for my data? Or I want to take 50 sky flats because I want a proper flat correction? During the observation, how will I observe? Do I really have to go to the telescope, visitor mode? Can I do it remotely? Is it better out service mode scheme? Do I need long run, maybe over one semester? Do I have the possibility to observe over more than one semester? Or observing one target for 30 minutes every night for 3 months? So a monitoring program. Can I do simultaneous observation in more than one telescope? And then, of course, after the observation, what do I bring home? Raw data, bias and flat, that I have to reduce with flat combine? Or are there pipelines available that can help me in this task? So our idea is to ask people to think about all this, and while it's kind of easy to know why do I ask what I ask for, because it's written in the proposal, it's important to know why people don't ask for something different. And so all of you should wonder, why am I doing all the same thing and why I'm not doing something different? It's because I cannot, because there is not the instrument with the resolution, with the field of view, with the spectral coverage or whatever is not available, so I cannot ask for it. Or these are examples of ideas that they've been discussing, questions that may, for the debate. So I have a 3 hours observing program. I want to do it in service night, but there is no service night in 3 months. So I cannot ask, and it doesn't make any sense to ask for one night because I need 3 hours. So maybe we need more service night. Or maybe less because I want more visitors. So service night is stealing time to my science. Or I want to observe 2 weeks at Mercator. or at the INT? Can I really do that? And also, I mean, on the personal side, can I go and spend 2 weeks on the mountain observing without being killed by the family? Or maybe, if we had more people to support the observation, I would propose for 2 weeks, because someone else can help me in observing and take the data for me. Is more flexibility needed? More large-term program, simultaneous observation, whatever. Of course, the answer to this question is yes. Would I benefit of advanced instrument pipelines? Yes. So, which pipelines do we need? At which telescope? For which instrument? Do I need more remote observation? So if I had access to more telescopes with remote capabilities, would I ask for more time? Or would I have better data that I could use faster? Of course, we have to keep in mind all that is coming. Here is probably a very incomplete list, starting from WIV, ARS-3 that are coming soon, European Solar Telescope, CTA, Gaia, Plato, TESS, James Webb. There will be a bunch of new opportunities, data releases, catalogs that are coming. So how can we do better with the things that we have here at home? Also, let me stress that once WIV and ARPS will be in operation and the wide-field camera, the INT, will be decommissioned, the largest field of view, 40 by 40, will be installed at a 40-centimeter telescope. So we will not have access to wide-field imager soon to any large telescope, except maybe POWCAM, but that's a different story. Let me stress a little bit what we've been doing in the last few years at the Teddy Observatory. There has been a complete change in the way of observing, both with the Carlos Sanchez and the 80 centimeter. Why is that? Because of the remotization. So until 2012, both telescopes were inside the night cut evaluation. Now from 2012, they've been removed, and they've been for a few years judged by Alex as the head of the telescope instrumentation, and that they are now inside the ISC cut, as I said before. But if before we used to have visitors every night, now we have zero. We don't have visitors anymore, except the universities. We have tens of students coming from many different universities in Europe that come to practice and to learn observing, so we have a very important educational task with both telescopes. But most of the night we don't have observers because everyone is observing remotely, or we are giving the telescope operator the task to observe for us. So ourselves, meaning the support astronomer, prepare the observing night, but then the telescope operator most of the time do the observation for us. So they are having a fundamental role in the everyday life of the observatory. We have new instrumentation for both telescopes. Muscat 2, which provides simultaneous photometry in 4 filters. They are really given new life to the Carlos Sanchez, and we are close to the record of publication for this year. So there have been a burst of production of refereed papers coming from this telescope. We have a new camera installed at the IC-80 as well, which provides larger field of view, better sensitivity, and is close to be fully operational. But also we are implementing new software for having flexible observing block-based observation, so to have service monitoring and long-term programs every night working, and not to have that time at the telescope. Not to talk about the complete renewal of the control system of both telescopes. That is on the way. So this is what we are proposing. The first phase is to collect information. So we have prepared a Google questionnaire, another questionnaire, but this takes very few minutes. Most of the answers are multiple choices, so it takes very little time. We will send an email later today with the link. 2 weeks to fill it. Really, it's just a few minutes. The objective is to end up with some recommendation to implement something, what the community needs and wants and is feasible. So we have resources from the strategic plan for hiring people, software development, and hardware. Meaning that we invite you to think, to propose new ideas about improving what we have, but also building new instrumentation, new telescope, new legacy project between different groups. And we will try to at least start implementing what we can. And this is everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo, for this interesting talk. So, are there any questions?
Okay, my question is this both for the, I understand that this is both for the both observatories?
In principle.
Okay, in principle.
I mean,
Okay, this in principle, okay.
Things are easier here
At-
on some of the telescope here than in, if you want a 5 square degrees camera for the GTC, that's unlikely to happen. If you want a new camera for the 80 centimeter, that's easier to do.
Okay. Well, in terms of software, a couple of years ago I was part of the GTC Users Committee, and something that was coming up to the discussion, and it was a long story for a long time, was the fact that some of the, especially the earlier instruments for the GTC, didn't have a pipeline that would make easier to exploit the data, and this was regarded as an important drawback, and in really making the GTC productive. And the GTC is really our la joya de la corona, no? And sometimes I get the impression that we are using more resources for the Observatorio del Teide than for the GTC. Of course, the GTC is a different observatory. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, my ignorance may be that maybe the Observatorio del Teide is very productive, right? But the question would be, would it be possible to use these resources to actually help the GTC to improve some of the problems that they have, or is because it's an observatory that is a different implementation is impossible to do?
That's more a bureaucratic question. Yes, it could be possible. There must be an agreement between the two institutions, but I don't know.
I'm not sure that we are investing more in the Teide than in GTC. If you consider, in fact, one of the things that's going to happen is that we will have to absorb all the structure of the GTC in the near future in the IAC. It is because of the law of science, right? So even if it is separated, what it is invested in GTC is invested by us, in some sense. So I should say that that's not completely true, and the problem is that this equipe of people is not devoted to work on GTC. The GTC has its own people working. They have their own development department here in the Casa GTC, and they have a lot of a team of support astronomers working at the telescope, engineers, and so on. So it's not that simple. And let me say that the team of people working in our observatories actually is very small. It is completely under. We need more people.
Yes, but if there are resources to even build new instrumentation or new telescopes, it seems to me that it should be possible to have enough resources to write a pipeline. I mean, it's not, and the GTC doesn't have resources to do that. And then there is this story about, who can do that or whether it can be done or whatever, but then we have the joya de la corona that is underused or not underused, but maybe underexploited in some instruments because of this problem. And this is something that is clear to the GTC community.
Yeah, but the problem with the instrumentations and the software, that the pipelines and so on, that is part of the organization. They have their own. The people that put the instrument or the telescope have their own. Part of the agreement is to have their pipelines. I don't know how efficient they are, but they should provide a pipeline. And also the support astronomers of GTC should also work on this. So it is difficult to introduce a third team doing that. It's not that easy. It's not a simple task. And it's not a matter of just, we want to do it. Right? I mean, Emir has their own people contracted, postdoc here, working for the Emir pipelines, for example. I don't know what is the situation of Osiris, but Megara has their own pipelines. You need pipelines for Osiris.
Yeah, and it's something that
But this is
particularly, but this was something that was identified in the document.
yes.
So we are trying to be open to any outcome of this survey or trying to improve the observatories. The GTC is part of this observatory. So if we are restricting ourselves to, okay, we cannot touch the GTC, I feel this is a bit, I don't know, contradiction, right? Because the GTC is our best telescope.
That's true. Maybe this change once. Maybe we can change this once the structure of the GTC is integrated and the IAC. I don't know. But what I mean is, what I want to say is that it is not that simple as to put someone to do that, because we have the team of the instruments, the GTC team, and it's supposed that they should provide this.
Last thing, I have the impression that the GTC is more our telescope than the William Herschel, than the INT, than the Liverpool, right? So, okay, that's my last.
So I think this is a very interesting point, because if we don't have the good pipelines for GTC, it's part of the things we need to improve. And maybe the point is that it's not that we need someone or a team of support astronomers developing the pipelines, but they can be in charge of being in the middle between the observers and the developers, and making sure that it's like the point of communication between us and them. And it's not the same if I have to contact someone, that if they go and try to push the people, look, there's these people there who had this problem and we need to solve them. And they have more time to do that, to spend time on it than us. So that's the point, that they can be in charge of the communication between us and the developers. Not necessarily they develop the pipelines, but they make sure that they do the work. The team, yes, but that's the point, that with this we can propose, no, we need not 2, but we need 10 people taking care of this. So it's important to also put on the table all these things, because this will be the recommendation that we will do, will go in this direction. Maybe it's impossible, but at least we will put this on the table, and so we have to be open to.
Who can deal with Osiris problems is the Osiris team, right? There is an PI of Osiris. They continue there, yes. Yeah, maybe this is something to for the next group of technicians, right? The técnicos. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's
If
do
the
a
people ask for
suggestion
it,
to.
then yeah, exactly.
More comments?
Yeah, so you said that you want new ideas. You put a list of new telescope, new instrumentation, new whatever, but we don't know how what is the level of funding that you have for that, because depending of the amount of money that you have, I can propose different things. No? So very quickly thinking, one of the problems that we have here at the AC is that we basically lack a wide field imager. So the wide field camera, it's almost dead in the sense that it's very old and it's going to disappear. So we are probably one of the first class observatory in the world without a decent wide field imager. No? So that's an obvious instrument that is not at the observatories. So another question that I have is, I have all the impression that this is for promoting the observatory here at the Teide mountain. So is there any reason why we do not move most of our investment to the Roque, where the observing conditions far much better in terms of light pollution and so forth? It's something that you really want to be here for any reason? It's more easy for you to go up to the mountain? I mean, so many questions.
So I'll start with the last. So the answer is no. I mean, if you want to improve what we have here, we're not going to move the Carlos Sanchez to La Palma. So if you want, now Cain is dead, if you want a new infrared camera, it will come here.
The small telescope, the 40 centimeter, the 1 meter telescope from Las Cumbres, for example, why they do not move, or why when they put the new telescope they don't move to the better sites?
Right? And either in Tenerife or El Roque de los Muchachos. In El Roque de los Muchachos we are close to 4% of the land used. I'm afraid that TMT and CTA will be in the very limit or even up to the limit. So that is why the decision has been to do not to only install big telescopes in El Roque and smaller ones here. And I should say that the 2 meter is the limit for the tail. And when you think in the size for 2 meter, we are losing the sky conditions of Teide respect to El Roque. The only difference is the sky background. We lose half a magnitude, but this affects only some programs. Basically affects the program with the very big telescopes, right? Or the kind of things you do that go very deep, trying to look for, but not most of the programs. That is why we the main reason again is for limiting the sizes and not to permit to install 1 meter class telescopes at El Roque is because of this. We cannot occupy more than 5% of the land of the observatory. Well, I will not start to think on why. But this is, in principle, is not the policy.
So funding, with the current funding, it doesn't mean that in the future we may have more. With the new strategic plan, we are about a bit more than 1 million.
wanted to ask, so it's an impressive amount of facilities that there are on both observatories.
Sure.
But I was wondering, is there, for sure there is a study of what is the pressure factor on each of these facilities, or what is the productivity of each of these facilities? I suppose some of them will be more productive than other ones, so a possibility could be to use that to guide decisions of where to invest the resources. Because I have the feeling that most likely it's going to be difficult to make all of them equally successful, no?
Yeah, especially with this funding. No, of course, you're right. Yeah, probably. So in the night cut page, there are, I'm not sure there are statistics of the pressure anymore. There are the list of approved, but we don't know, well, at least personally I don't know the pressure of every single telescope per semester. But I think that's easy to find out, asking to them.
Of the number of publications that came from each of these telescopes, the number of citations, or the number of educational projects in which these facilities are used, because of course it's not, I mean, papers should not be the only metric, but to try to really evaluate the performance of each of these installations.
Any other questions or comments? No? Oh.
It is true that we have a lot of instruments, right? But as he say, it is also true that we have some areas that are not well resolved with what we have, and in the future this is gonna be even worse. William Herschel will soon have WIV, and the telescope will be mostly devoted to the galactic multi-object spectroscopy and so on. So we will lose a general purpose 4-meter telescope for a program that I say is great, but means that people that is not involved in this program will not have the William Herschel anymore, but for only a small fraction of time. It's more or less what happened with TNG. TNG is not anymore a general purpose telescope, it's mostly devoted to HARPS North. And soon we will lose the INT because they will install HARPS 3, right? So 1, 2, 3 HARPS are not enough. So one of the things that we should start to think in the future, for the future, is that we will need some sort of general purpose facilities for rapid response, general programs, and so on. They are going to build a 4-meter robotic telescope, but not in not less than 8 years, as far as we discussed a pair of days ago, right? So this project of the 4-meter robotic is for the future in a decade. So we need to think if we can have other options as soon as possible, right? Also, we have to think that some of our facilities are rather old, need to be improved. We have the IAC have now 1-meter telescope. The JKT is our telescope. It's now in the SARA consortium, but it belongs to the IAC. The IC80 belongs to the IAC. The Carlos Sanchez belongs to the IAC. But I'm pretty sure that we have to think in some in retirement of some of them, to put in their place something better, newer, and if possible, bigger. Right? We are thinking in a 2-meter telescope to be installed in the place of the IC80. We are looking for the possibilities of having it, and this will be, if it goes, will be for late 2023. right? We are working on it with Alex. And there are other projects. We have been discussing with Jorge Casares the possibility of like 1.5 meter telescope wide field imager. Right? That is, we are somehow limited by the present. If we want rapid solutions, we have to go to companies that build telescopes. They have almost some standard class of telescopes, right?
Okay, any other comments, questions? Well, if not, thank you again, Matteo.
Thank you.